Awesome. All right, Mike. So good to have you here. Have been talking to you about partnerships and ecosystems for a really long time, and pleased to kind of do it on the record and get some other people here in the perspectives that I've been privileged to hear over the years. So maybe we could just start by talking a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for having me. It's great to see you as always, and I love our chats. It's been quite a journey for me. I started my career actually in the marketing and advertising space. I came straight out of business school and got into marketing and advertising. I lived through the .com boom and bust as well. So during those years, that's really where I got into technology, and I actually found myself working inside of agencies, if you will, systems integrators for about 20 years. So I spent a lot of time in the services side of the business, really kind of honing my skills on account management, customer service, how to run a business. I was fortunate at a pretty young age to run my own agency as well. So out of the .com bust, there was actually quite a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities. And I grabbed onto that, started my own company, ran that for quite a few years. And that honestly just really accelerated my career. One of the things that I always say is, you know, how in school, sometimes you can skip a grade in school. I feel like I skipped levels in my career because of running my own business. And I was able to then go back out into the corporate world and jump up multiple levels probably earlier than I would have normally done. So then I ended up getting more into executive leadership and management, where I was actually running the agencies, whether it was an office, a region. At one point, I worked for WPP, Publicis, IPG, Omnicom. So a lot of the big global agencies, and just got amazing experience from that. And so at around the 20-year mark, I was exhausted and was really kind of tired of being in those large holding company environments, and really wanted to try something different yet relatable. And I found myself in partnerships. You know, I was working with a lot of technology companies in probably the last 5 years at WPP, working with the likes of Adobe and Acquia and Sitecore, a lot of the big content management systems. Started working with Telium, and that's actually where I ended up landing into Telium for my first partnerships job. And they had a need for somebody to come in to run partnerships. I had a unique background, understanding technology, understanding the partner landscape. But my feeling was I really knew how the customers wanted to engage with software companies and not be sold to as heavily and aggressively, and make it more about the relationship. And that's what I brought into Telium. So I started at Telium to run the North America team at first, and then was promoted to run global after that, and just had a really great run. I was at Telium for 4 years. I learned a tremendous amount across the entire board of working at a software company, how to run global partnerships. And I continued to stay steadfast in my philosophy of it's all about the relationships, and just do the right thing, approach it as a relationship, approach them as customers. Don't hammer your partners for leads, and just build that quality ecosystem. And that's what I was able to do. So I had a great run there, built a very strong global team out at Telium. And then now I'm at Trey. So I get to kind of do it all over again. So I joined Trey a year ago to come in and build the partner team in the program. I was the first hire. I'm now up to around 8 or 9 employees within a year, which is amazing. And now I'm getting to build that program from scratch and really expand it, and drive significant business for Trey.
Amazing. Yeah. What a great journey. And I think that that 20 years in the agency land is invaluable.
It
I
is.
think that was where so much of the kind of early SaaS partnership stuff that now is kind of standard practice was being built. Like really,
Yeah.
like Adobe with a lot of digital agencies, creative
Yep.
agencies is kind of like where a lot of the early magic happened. It's definitely where we took some inspiration when we were building Optimize these partnership program back in the day as well.
Yep.
Like I think even still today, it's really like a big question mark on how to effectively partner with like large global agencies and systems integrators. And obviously, like you've kind of been on the ground, like with Adobe as an example. Like, what are some of the things that you saw being on the other side of the table that like were really effective and enabled like Adobe to build that lasting relationship with a like a Digitas or like some of these larger brands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think Adobe does an absolutely magnificent job in partnerships. They really do. They have built a massive empire of partner ecosystem to really drive their business. And they get the agencies to be so supported and invested into Adobe. So I think what Adobe did really well and what I did, and admittedly, I drank the Kool-Aid, being at the agency, being at WPP, there's a big, not an empty promise, but this big promise and expectation from Adobe that if you build an Adobe practice, you will drive revenue, you will have a successful business. And we were out there watching companies literally being built just off the back of Adobe and being wildly successful, getting acquired by other large agencies and becoming these huge AEM shops or big Adobe Analytics shops. So it really was working. So we decided as a business we were going to make that bet, we were going to make the investment. And what they did well and what we did well was it all came down to a lot of it was the training and enablement and knowing that we were certified. Because in Adobe's world, if they have a certified partner they can recommend, that's exactly what you need. So we pushed really hard to get our team certified and essentially built a business around Adobe. And that's what I always recommend my agency partners do. And whenever I talk to other colleagues of how to work with systems integrators, they need to build a business. They need to build a business off of your software in order to pay attention enough to you and to really be doing business with you and driving business. Agencies get paid on hourly wages. It's all billable hours, it's all services dollars, and that's how they make money. They don't sell any hard goods. They're not selling software. Some might, but the majority, it's all labor, quite frankly. So if you can teach them how to build a revenue driving business off of your platform, they will adopt it and they will embrace it and they will run with it. And that's what Adobe did really well. And then you look at every major systems integrator, every major agency holding company have massive Adobe practices. They're bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars on the high end, annually within these contracts.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so it sounds like you made a bet and actually like seeing it pay off was a really great journey. Can you
Yeah.
like tell us a little bit about that bet? Like the how internally at a big agency, like WPP, massive.
Yep.
Like how does that happen? Like kind of business
It's
plan, who needs to be involved? Like how do you kind of like
Yeah,
orient
it
that?
it's really interesting in the holding companies because at the end of the day, the holding company's goal is to obviously everyone's goal is to win new business. And the reason why the holding companies buy so many other independent agencies is to strengthen their bench of talent. So typically, let's just say, for example, a large RFP comes in for a global brand and there's a requirement around Adobe experience. Whoever's running that RFP, they're now going to look in the network to see, okay, who can I work with in the network that has Adobe experts? And you start crowdsourcing talent and other agencies and pulling together a pitch team to then go after that business. The challenge becomes they're all individual agencies and revenue gets in the way. So then people start arguing over who gets what cut, et cetera. So what WPP and others have done is they then build an Adobe practice across the group, and it's think of it as its own new little entity inside the organization where there's a pool of resources that they can pull from to support certain software packages, one being Adobe. So I was basically, the agency I worked for was called Miram, which is now Wunderman Thompson, and we were essentially in this alliance with three or four other WPP agencies like VML, Cognified, and a few others, where we were the Adobe practice, and then we would kind of go and jointly pitch and then do that work together as well. So that's really what allowed us to justify it because we knew we can get larger customers and larger deals if we brought our resources together.
That's awesome and so cool. I think to be a part of something like that. Like
Yeah.
when the business case was being built, was this, hey, I think we can sell this to our existing customers, or like we can attract new customers like ourselves, or was it, hey, we think Adobe will send us customers if we build this practice? Like what was the kind of primary value driver?
Yeah, it was actually both. So it was very much I'd say in one sense it was reactionary in a good way because we knew the business was out there and we had to up our game and capabilities to be able to do that level of work and have those capabilities. So we had to do it to increase our chances of winning on business coming in to us. There's definitely an opportunity to expand business as well, but a lot of it was on the promise of Adobe bringing us business. So we would hustle like crazy to build as many relationships as we could inside the Adobe ecosystem with the regional sales leaders, the individual AEs as well, based on territories and segments and verticals, and really build that trust, just like we do today in partnerships. Of if I'm, at Trey and a customer asks for a recommendation to a partner, well, I'm going to deliver it to one of my trusted SIs because I know they're going to do a good job. So we
Mhm.
did the same thing in the reverse. I was the SI and I wanted them to feel good that they can pass me the work and we would do a good job for them.
That's awesome. Yeah, and and so like the with Adobe, I know today they have a huge amount of agency partners, but they definitely favor and prioritize the big folks, and I think
Yeah.
they've always done that where that they definitely feed the big folks first, and I think that that's
Yeah.
it's been a winning strategy for them. But was there anything that you kind of did like particularly as a agency partner where you made yourself the most compelling avenue for receiving referrals?
Yeah, I think, at the time we had a very deep analytics practice and we had a lot of good expertise there. So we knew that within the ecosystem of SI partners, we could stand out in a certain way. Um, WPP itself had a very strong Adobe campaign practice in Europe, specifically in Northern Europe, that we knew we can leverage as well. So we were strategic in really what product line we were going to align to within Adobe that would be most advantageous for us. And then the other thing we did is we really focused on a lot of the government work that they do as well. So there's a big focus on the public sector within the Adobe practice, and there's a lot of work within government, a lot of military work. And it just so happened that the agency I worked for did all of the advertising marketing for the Marine Corps.
Mm.
So we knew that we could, increase our chances of winning more business in the public sector and trying to get the Marine Corps to move over to the Adobe platform. And Adobe very much befriended us at that point because they knew we had the business. They wanted them as a customer as well. And there was mutual interest then on both sides to really push.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. Almost like carving out niches where you
Yeah.
could like really win with them makes a ton of sense because I'm sure that they on their side kind of had territory based teams and there was like people that were really like, oh, like this is our go to. Like in the whole career in partnerships, I've always seen like there's certain reps or certain teams that collaborate really really well with partners, and if you can kind of stick to some of those teams, you're probably going to do really well.
Absolutely.
And so, like you already talked about how agencies and consultancies, it's a service business, and so like everything is billable hours, and that's how the
Yeah.
whole and they operate on quite a thin margin
Yeah.
often, and so like doing that training and certification and enablement that you mentioned like was so key to getting up and running like comes at a cost to the agency, right? Because it's basically it's hours that those people aren't working on client projects and
Yeah.
billing. So like how does the agency justify that, or like is that something that Adobe kind of helped you come up with the business case on, or like how, like tell me a little bit more about that whole thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So they would basically have in each of their product lines requirements on how many certifications you needed for each product line and what type of certification you needed. And they were good at managing that process with us, saying, okay, you've got three, you need five more, or however many you needed. So we ended up actually building incentive programs inside the agency eh, to basically politely and legally bribe people to do it because they were very busy. They had all their billable hours they had to work on, so they had to put in extra time. So we put together, gift card packages. If you do this training, you'll get an extra day off. Like whatever we can come
Mm.
up with to incentivize them. We went further though as well and put them into their individual growth plans as departments. So if the analytics department gets certified on Adobe Analytics, then you guys get X. And so there was smart incentives to make sure they can grow in their career, and other things that they would get because of the value it was going to bring to the agency. So there was a lot of micromanagement, of just really politely harassing people to make sure they do what they had to do. They then had to go and actually take a test at an outside facility that cost a fee. So Adobe would pay for those, so we didn't have to incur the costs. But it was a pretty thorough process that you have to go through.
That's awesome. And was there anything else that because obviously like you've got your SWAT team across these different agencies that's like the Adobe practice. And I'm assuming in addition to getting Adobe excited about sending you business, you're kind of going around the houses internally as well, like encouraging people to kind of sell this work into their
Yeah.
existing customers. Like what did that look like? How did you get like all of the other like brands, teams like excited about kind of selling in this Adobe
Yeah,
business?
we had to paint a pretty big picture of just the overall value of the relationship and what it was bringing to the individual agency and the holding group, as a whole. And so really making sure they understood why we were doing it. Now, the very fine line you have to walk though inside of an agency is you also have to be objective, and you really shouldn't be seen as pushing one platform, because then you're not going to have an unbiased opinion. So there were times where we may not recommend Adobe, and I was okay with that, because at the end of the day you have to do what's right for the customer. Now the vendor may say something different and say you should always recommend them, but again, it's you're being hired for your expertise and your advice. And if you end up being known as, well, they're just going to be X shop and they're only going to recommend this, that hurts your chance, I think, of actually getting more business and having your customers trust you. So we would go as far as we felt comfortable of making sure that we would adopt it and push it. But then we also wanted to make sure our teams knew that we had other partnerships. We were working with other software vendors as well that we could recommend. And in an agency, you have to. When a customer arrives, I always joke, they show up with their software luggage. They've got their luggage of MarTech and AdTech, and it's a hodgepodge. And you inherit all of this technology, and you have to know a little bit about everything. And if you don't, you have to get trained quickly so you can support that customer. There may be a point where redo their stack and make new recommendations, but that's typically over a 18 to 36 month journey. It's not going to happen overnight. So you have to really be able to be objective and flexible and support whatever stack that arrives, and then kind of get them into the new stack that you want to get them to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think we at Amplitude, sorry, at Optimizely were like the ones that were catching the scraps when Adobe didn't get recommended. You know,
Yes.
that was like our whole pitch. Like we were fortunate enough to kind of get introduced to the central team at WPP through
Yep.
some of our investors, Andreessen Horowitz, and
Yep.
our VP of sales even ended up meeting up with Sir Martin and kind of got the green light
Yep.
and had some like great conversations and like met the central team, like met all of the individual brands, went through the whole thing, and still it was like, hey, like we're only gonna recommend your product when it's not, when Adobe's not the right fit,
Right.
basically. And for us, like we were kind of okay with that. We were kind of like,
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, WPP was still such a huge
Oh,
beast.
massive.
Like
Yeah.
that was like that was more than we could kind of ask for,
Yeah. You can still carve a piece of the pie out and have it be a very significant piece of pie.
Yeah, exactly. So I imagine there was probably some overlap, like right before you joined Telium, potentially, where I know like Lisa on our team. I don't know if you've met Lisa Thoman, but
Yep.
yeah, like she was definitely working that mirror relationship in the US, trying to
Yeah.
get people interested in Optimizely.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's at that point too, like, I think another unique thing that happened for me in the agency was there's only so many partnerships you can bring on, and because there's only so many people that can work on it. So one of the things that I always advise my team on that are working with SIs is, if an SI disengages for a bit, it may not be because they don't want to work with you, they just don't have time.
Yeah.
They're managing a lot of relationships, and they're managing day-to-day customers, RFPs. So really it's a bit of a on-demand type relationship. When they need you, they're going to reach out, but they're not going to be calling you every day with a new lead. It just doesn't work that way. And I think that's why I'm so excited of where, in my opinion, the new era of partnerships has arrived versus the old way of doing it, of hammering your partners saying, where are my leads? Where are my leads? It just doesn't work that way. It's the lead's going to come to you when it's there, and they're going to bring it to you because they trust you and they like you and they want to do business with you and they're willing to recommend you. So that's why that relationship side is so important to me.
Yeah, I love it. And we had Dan on the show from Amplitude, and he was talking about something really similar where, he'd been working with an SI. I won't say the name just because I don't want to get him in
Yeah.
trouble, but like going across the whole business, global SI, like and planting the seeds with everyone. And he met someone, had a really good conversation, and 9 months later that person reached back out and was like, hey, I've got a project
Yep.
for you, and
Yeah.
that was the catalyst to like
Yes.
start the whole thing. And if he wasn't like just planting goodwill like everywhere that he went and like kind of checking in once in a while, making sure everyone's good, like he could have easily burnt that relationship because he was being too demanding, or like been mistaken in thinking that that person wasn't interested, or like
Yeah.
what wasn't the right person to drive this forward. But like you say, it was really like it's billable hours, and they didn't have a project where it was a fit that they could
Yeah.
bill on. And once they did, he picked up the phone. He's like, hey, I'm ready to go, I've got the project.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's where I think an important thing is to get the sales organization. Yeah, I'm kind of going off track here, but it's related. In SaaS, it's so important to get the sales leadership aligned to understanding, because a lot of times there's expectation of instant gratification with partners. And I always tell really everybody, if you want a deal today, don't talk to a partner because they won't give you a deal today. It's not instant gratification. It's the long game. And so it's making sure people understand how those businesses operate, and they don't operate like a SaaS company at all. They are the polar opposite of a SaaS company.
Yeah, and I'd love to spend some more time talking about that, because I know also you uh function really really well on with the sales team at Trey. um
Yeah.
so I'd love to talk about that, but before we jump into it, you kind of mentioned this new era of partnerships, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your view on that, and like
Yeah.
what is this new era that we're ushering in?
I think it's such a breath of fresh air. I mean, it's a lot of what I personally believe in. It's relationships first. It's all about the quality of the relationship. We're in a relationship business, and if you don't have a strong relationship, I don't think you have a business or a partnership. So, it's all about the quality of it. The way I build teams and the way I run my business is purely based on relationships and integrity and doing the right thing and helping people. And it might sound a little corny, but it works and it's true. And so, you know, I very much subscribe to servant leadership, and I'm here to serve my team. I'm here to block and tackle and move things out of the way and make sure they're successful and happy. And I do the same thing with my partners. I bend over backwards for my partners. Anything they need, I will do. It's like no task is too small. It doesn't matter to me. And I want to help them make money, because at the end of the day, uh, it's really, we're all here to drive business. We're all here to grow companies, and it needs to be mutually beneficial. So going in through that lens of mutually beneficial, we're here to help each other. We're not going to take advantage of each other, and we're going to be honest with each other. And if those things aren't aligned, that's okay. I'm just going to choose not to do business with that person. And it's okay to say no. One of the things I always did in my agency career, and I still stand by it today, and I did it multiple times. I've fired clients in the past that were toxic, and I think of it as bad revenue. When you have a team that's stressed out, people in tears, not wanting to come to work, quitting over the stress, it's not worth it. I'd rather take that team, make them happy, put them on other business, and you'll make tenfold in revenue. So I'm the same way with partnerships. If it's not a two-way street and we're not being treated properly, which honestly doesn't happen very often, then we won't do business with them. So I think that's the new era. And I would say internally inside of an organization, what I've seen specifically at Trey is the appreciation for partnerships, and knowing that it's not instant gratification, that it's the long game, but it's critical for success and continuous growth and really scaling to the size of a SaaS business that we want to become. And having that support from the leadership down and not having to always justify your existence, which sadly I know a lot of partner folks still have to deal with. That's a very old way of thinking, and it's a very old way of running software companies. And the fact that you have to continue to justify your existence of even the entire department at times, I think is pretty ridiculous. So I would say, politely to, the leaders in the SaaS industry and the sales leaders that may not be agreeing with this yet, you've got to get on board. Like, you have to get on board, because this is the way that business gets done, and it works extremely well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's why partnerships is the best client facing job in
Yes.
go to market, because it's like there's not another role where you can, or like regularly can just pick whether you're going to work with someone or not based on like, hey, is there a good culture fit here?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
salespeople don't get to walk away from an opportunity if there's not a good culture fit. And same with
Right.
customer success and support. It's like, if there's like a nightmare customer, you might fire that customer in SaaS, but it's like pretty rare, Whereas
Pretty
like
rare.
in
Yeah.
partnerships, it's like, oh, like this person isn't hitting all of the right notes. You're like, I'm like 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10 on this partner. I'm going to tread carefully on this one, and because like you spend as much, if not more time building that reputation internally, that if you
Yeah.
have trust, what do they say, trust is built in drips and lost in buckets or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
so true. It's like one partner with like nefarious motives, or just like a bad culture fit for the business, and it can kind of spoil the whole like all of that work that you've been doing.
Yeah.
And so
1,000%.
yeah, I love that, like leading with relationships and integrity. Like many of the partnerships that I've built, those people are like some of my best friends still today, like
Absolutely. And that's what it should be. You should, this is also how you build your network and your ecosystem. And when you need help, you reach out and you get help. When someone needs help from you, you're going to help them as well. So it, it's it's amazing to me that this has become my career, and an opportunity for others to have this kind of a career. It really is. I mean, I'd say one really funny thing, because this just popped in my head. My son, who's now 11, this was about a year ago. He always asks me about my job and wants to know more about what I do, and I explain it to him. And he literally looked back at me. He's like, "Dad, so you get paid to have friends, basically?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I do." You're right, buddy. I get paid to have friends. So
That's amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
I was back home a couple of years ago in the UK for Christmas, and I was taking some calls, and I was working out of my mum's kitchen for like a couple of days, and she was like, wow, you're on calls all the time. Like, when do you find the time to do any work? And I was like, oh, like this is the work.
this is the work.
This is the whole thing. She was like, oh wow, that doesn't seem like much work to me. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, yeah,
We're
it's amazing.
professional talkers. That's what I
Yeah.
say. We're professional talkers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Like because, like you say, I think you have to do the same thing in sales and success as well. But like, really, so much of what we're doing is saying, hey, like we're here to help you, like do something within your company, and
Right.
there is this like trust where it's like, we want you to introduce us to your customers, or like we want you to get trained up so we can introduce you to our customers. But there's
Right.
like this massive investment that someone has to make at the start of a partnership, like that initial work of the partnership is like such a big bit of work, and so like there is this big trust exercise. And so if like leading with trust, and like having that focus on integrity, I understand why you've been so successful in developing great partnerships, and
Yeah.
great friendships as well. I count myself within that group.
100%.
So
Yes.
yeah, so like tell me a little bit more about internally. Like, I know that you have a fantastic relationship with the sales team at Trey,
Yeah.
and like you're all like firing on all cylinders. So like tell us a little bit about that, because I know that like on a lot of other teams they have that friction. On a lot of other teams they're feeling like they have to justify like their existence as a part
Yep.
of the organization. Give us a download on how that looks for you.
Sure. Yeah, I think, out of the gate, in order, in my opinion, to build trust with the sales team, you've got to do the work. So I was a lone soldier when I started. I was the only partner person here for about probably 5 or 6 months until my first hire came on board. So I very much believe in rolling my sleeves up, getting my hands dirty, doing the work, and that's one of the reasons why I came here and why I think Trey thought that I was a good fit, because I was going to come in and do the work. I wasn't going to come in and just, do a high level strategy and then go hire a big team to come in and do that. I was going to do the work first, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then go from there. So honestly, I will dive into any account, any prospect. I will hunt for my AEs. I still do it every day. I know they have a hit list of clients they're trying to get into. I'll go through my personal network. I'll go through our partner network. How can I help you? How can I help you get in? So I am over the top customer service with the AEs. And my message to them is I want to help you make money. I want to help you win. And if you leverage myself and my team, I'm going to increase your probability of winning this deal. We're not competing against one another. We're not trying to derail anything. I'm increasing your odds of winning. And that message really resonates with them. And I'll admit one thing, and no disrespect to SaaS sales folks that have been in the business longer, we're fortunate to have a group of folks at Trey that are earlier in their career in the sales organization. They may not be as jaded as some might be that I've experienced in the past. And they're just like, you're willing to help me? That's amazing. Thank you. I'll take it, and then how can I help you and how can I reciprocate? So I have AEs now that are just ecstatic to work with us because they know we're going to help. And that's the attitude and really the entire goal of what we bring to it. So I think I built a lot of trust with them. The proof's in the pudding. When you do help them, they love it. When you bring them net new leads out of the clear blue sky, they love it. And you know that partner leads are going to be higher quality, warmer leads. You're getting right to the decision maker. You're not having to do your typical upfront, prove to them why they should be talking to you, et cetera. And we've actually had to work with the AEs to kind of teach them how to take on these leads because naturally, and I would too probably want to go into your standard discovery. And this is why Trey is wonderful. It's like, no, we're way past that. Our partner already told them to talk to Trey. They vouched for us. They just need to see the product. How does it work? How much does it cost? Let's go. And that just, they skip a whole bunch of steps up front, which is great. And then the other thing that we've done now is now that my team has grown, I've actually now assigned a partner manager to each of our sales pods. So we have pods broken up by commercial, mid market, and then east and west. So I now have a partner manager assigned to each of those pods, and that's their go to partner manager that they work with. So it's easier for them to navigate in our org. One of the challenges I would say at Telium is we had so many partners and everyone was on different partners that people didn't know who to go to. And so this helps them a lot because they just have one person that they can work with day to day. And we're right there side by side hunting. And if you think about a set of target accounts you're going after, and you have an AE, you have an SDR, you have an SE, and then you have the partner manager. We're all part of that squad, and it's whoever gets in there, great. We got in. Now let's go and close the deal.
That's awesome. And like tactically, how does that work when, say, like you have a partner manager, like for the West team as an example, right? Like, do they own all partners in the West, like whether it's tech or
No.
agency, or yeah, how does it work?
So that's, yeah. So this, I'll explain this. This got a little challenging because
Yeah,
you're
it's
right.
hard.
So
It's really
yeah,
hard.
it's hard. So you've got partner managers broken out by territory from a supporting from an outbound, let's get into these companies, but they're
Hmm.
also managing managed partners. And so honestly, the way I solved it, hopefully I'm not oversharing. I don't think it's too big of a deal to say this. How I'm measuring my team this year, it's a team goal. It's
Mm,
not individual goals. So as we were thinking through this, it's like, okay, well, I have one partner manager in the West, and maybe the prospect's trying to get in somewhere, but we're going to leverage a different partner to help us get in there that is in the East. Who gets credit? And it's a nightmare to try and manage that and you just
yeah.
even figure it out. So I said, you know what? Why don't we just have a team goal? We all trust each other. We've built a tribe. That's the mentality that I have. And if everyone's on board with this, let's have a team goal so no one gets in each other's way of helping. And that's what we did. So there's a
Yeah.
team goal for the year, everyone contributes, and there's no crossover and confusion on who does what.
Yeah, I love that, because it doesn't mean that the number needs to be any smaller. Like, it's the same
No,
number.
it's the same
Yeah.
number. Yeah, it's just different than you having an individual quota. It's a team quota, and we hold everybody accountable. And it's people go on vacation. It's like, that's fine. Go on vacation. We got your back. We'll fill in. We'll do whatever's needed, and then you'll help me when I'm gone. So, I mean, it's very much, as you can see, that is my philosophy in
Hmm.
general. I mean, it's
Hmm.
how I manage my partners. It's how I go to market. It's the same thing of how I manage internally. Is I don't want anybody fighting over things and confusing. Like, our job's hard enough every day. So pull the complexity out of it, make it easy. So we're all just aligned and doing the same thing.
Love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it. And then, so like, you also mentioned that you have great top down support from the exec team, and I
Yeah.
think that that's like something that you're a seasoned professional, and so you know how to kind of navigate that. Like, I think a lot of people in partnerships, there's not many people with partnerships experience, and so a lot of people are like 3 years as a partner manager and then end up being like a head of partnerships somewhere, and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't know how to navigate that C-level conversation yet.
Right. Right.
And so, like, how, like, I've seen it firsthand where you have incredible support from the exec team at Trey. Like,
Yeah.
how did you build that trust, and like, how do you like maintain that over time?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think so. Number one, I think I'm grateful because the C suite already believed in it. So I didn't have to convince anybody. They knew that they needed it. It was a valuable thing, and let's go do it. How I've maintained it and how I continue to maintain it and manage up and continue to expand my team is, quite honestly, showing the results. I'm a very revenue focused partner leader, and I say that meaning I want to focus on growth. I want to get our company to the next level, and I know that I can contribute to that personally and as my team as well. So I'm always focused on the numbers and the revenue and very hard metrics are that you can prove. So when we look at the economics of our business and knowing how much it costs for us to acquire a lead, what that conversion rate is like from a lead to a sales qualified opportunity to then close, I have the same metrics. We all operate off the same metrics, and I continue to make sure that my metrics are strong and even better, and continue to show the business that I can drive effective business into the company. So I really focus on the numbers, and let's just say hypothetically the numbers weren't in my favor, then I would adjust and I would accept that. It's like, yeah, you know what, this other team is outperforming us. Let me go rethink why this should be different, and I won't expect them to just keep giving me whatever I want. So I really just continue to prove ourselves in the number and stay very focused on the plan. I would say one piece of advice: it's very easy to get caught up in partnerships and want to do everything. And I'm the type of individual that wants to do everything as well. And I want to help everybody and save the world. But when there's a plan, there's a plan. So one piece of advice I always get from my leader in CRO is stick to the plan. We have a plan for the year. We need to deliver X. Focus on that. Other stuff, sure, that's nice, but is it going to get to the number? Is it going to hit the plan? And that's really allowed me to stay hyper focused. In a fast growth SaaS company, I can be off on 25 tangents each day. I always have to stay focused. So I think that also shows credibility for you that you're working towards the plan for the year. And this is how I'm going to hit my numbers to contribute to the business.
I love that. And I think if every person that's running a partnerships team right now could just take that away and implement it, like, hey, what's the metric that the C suite are expecting me to drive? And
Yeah.
I'm going to drive that metric, like,
Yeah.
because the reality is, like, I mean, I know that you have like quite you have a like a binary sales metric, right? Like,
Yeah.
and like, that doesn't stop you from going and building great partnerships and reciprocating and everything else. It just means, hey, like, your success is measured on that thing and you're focusing
Yeah.
towards it. And I think that's amazing. Like, I've been in this position myself, and I speak to people almost every day that are in the same position when they're like, yeah, like, we really want to drive that metric. Also, like partners could help so much with our retention number if we had these
Yes.
integrations, or
Yes.
like,
Yes.
usage of our product goes up so much, and the success team should be doing this thing. And it's like all of those things are amazing for the business. And like at some point, when the company's like at maturity level that it makes sense, you should be doing all of those things. But like
Yes.
staying laser focused on that number that the exec team are expecting you to deliver on is the path to success. And like
Yeah.
getting rid of any ambiguity is like, it's such a good leadership takeaway for everyone. So like, thank you
Absolutely.
for sharing that, because I think like anyone that gets that and implements it is going to like 10x their success
I
as a
agree. I
partnership
agree.
leader.
And I'll add one more small thing, yet very large and valuable if you have the opportunity. So if you are in the position of a partner leader, get a seat at the table for the planning for the year. I had a seat at the table with our executive team when we were doing our plan for this fiscal year. And I knew exactly how many leads I needed to drive, how many sales qualified opportunities, and what that then turned into on the revenue side. So looking at, we call it our SOT, our overall plan for the year, every department has metrics they need to deliver on, and it's all to contribute to the overall end goal of the year. But I was very much part of that planning and knowing what I'm signing up for. And then what your piece of the business is. I know sometimes partnerships gets lumped into sales and it ends up just being kind of one big number and no one's quite clear on how it's separated. But you have to separate it because we function very, very differently. And I think that will just help you also continue to justify the value because there are separate metrics and you're not having to always just figure out ways to justify, why the partner team's important.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it also means that there's still a ton of friction with the other departments, because partnerships never like really fits into most of the other plans. But if you're at least in the meeting,
Yeah.
you're getting a head start on that, rather than like once the plans get rolled out. So I
Yeah.
think you're totally right on that. Like as we kind of start to wrap up, but I mean, we've spent so much time talking about really interesting stuff already. I think like there's two things I would love to ask. Number one, like, right, Trey is a company that exists on integrations, and like partnerships and integrations is in the DNA of the company.
Yeah.
And I think that was the same at Telium as well. Like
Yeah.
integrations is the DNA of the company. And like there are a lot of companies out there, especially API companies and everything else that exists today, where like the whole business is basically integration partnerships. And I think a lot of companies don't realize that, like
Yeah.
a segment, awesome team, everything else, but I don't think they really realize that, hey, like we've got 300 companies integrated into our platform, and every single one of them should be like, or not, but most of them should be partners and should be
Yeah.
really singing from the same hymn sheet. Like
Right.
it seems like at Trey, like culturally people really get that. Like from a product team perspective, like what do you think like was the mindset shift for them?
The mind shift set in them understanding the value of that and
Yeah.
understanding. Yeah. I think so. Since I've been here, I've spent a lot of good time with our product team, our engineering team, and really trying to be the business face of what we've built. So if you think about it, this amazing product's been built by a great group of product folks and engineers, and they've continued to build and build and build. We have over 700 native integrations now. There's always that engineering view and the product view of it, but then there's the business side. So now it's going in and how do we really monetize that? How do we really make sure that we're doing all the right things, that we are promoting the relationships we have, that we're seeking out new integrations that are hot in the market that we should have because of what's happening in the space. So we've built a really good partnership of just kind of us being the eyes and ears, out there in the space. And there's a couple recent integrations we've built proactively because we say, you know what, these are really strong companies. They should be in our marketplace and they have a great customer base that's out there. Like we all win basically.
Hmm.
Trey will win because we will attract more business because of this integration. That partner will win as well. And so I'm very fortunate that I get to bring a certain amount of integrations to the table every quarter that we built, and we build on our own dime strategically. So we can now take that and go to market and talk about it. I would say the other thing that we all realize too is the importance of the relationship in those big, large organizations of NetSuite, ADP, Salesforce, that it's very difficult to actually have a face to face relationship. So my team and I have worked really hard to go and broker those relationships to at least have a face to the integration. It's like, of course, we have the NetSuite integration,
Yeah.
but nobody knows anybody at NetSuite, so let's go knock on their door and build a relationship. So we're really trying to become the external face of those and build those partnerships, and make sure that we have someone to call when we need help. If there's an issue with the API or an engineer needs a sandbox and we don't have one anymore, how do we do it? So we're really trying to be a good partner, and being a middleware platform is amazing in partnerships. We can work with everybody, which is a blessing and a curse. So we have to be very responsible on who we work with and how we prioritize them, because we can get overwhelmed really, really fast.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Like the way that we like to finish these conversations out is by asking, like, what's something that you learned recently that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Um, there's a couple things. There's a couple tactical ones, and then I don't know, probably a couple lofty ones. Tactically speaking, we've gotten really smart on how we are doing our go to market strategy, leveraging a lot of the great partner ecosystem tools that are out there in the space that are continuing to pop up. If you look, someone like a Crossbeam, so we're really taking advantage of the technology that's built and using it in different ways. So we've learned recently that, we could leverage my LinkedIn network inside of Crossbeam to then figure out how I'm personally connected to the prospects that my AEs are going after. So talk about building goodwill with your AEs. They're always politely harassing you for introductions to somebody that you know on LinkedIn and wanting to ghost write an email for you. So, we took it a step further and said, okay, I'm going to download my database of contacts. I'm going to upload it into Crossbeam. I'm going to create myself as a partner, internal partner. I'm not going to expose it to the outside world. But now I'm going to map that against all of the prospects that we have in our business that we're going after, and how are we connected? And then we're going to run those reports and we're going to share them with all the AEs. So the AEs literally have a cheat sheet that they can look at saying, okay, well, Mike's connected to this person and that person and that person. And it gets us going to market faster. It's not reactive, it's proactive. So that's been a really cool thing that I've learned recently, tactically speaking. I think the other thing I've learned is, and again, like I said, I'm a servant leader, and I think if anything, it's more of just reinforcing, I'd say, my philosophy and my beliefs and how I do things. Seeing what I've been very fortunate to accomplish here at Trey in the last year, I've learned to stick with my gut and just stay true to what I know is the right thing to do. And it all works out. And it's working beautifully. To see something actually working that you felt good about and you've proven it and it's actually running and working is really gratifying. So I've just reminded myself again that trust your gut and just do the right things, and it all works out.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. If it, if not, if the one takeaway is like, hey, focus on the metric that the exec team expects, and the second one is like, hey, stick the course when like, don't get distracted by everything else. Like, I think if people took those two insights from this today and implemented them, everyone would be better. Like, productivity is going to go through the roof. So hopefully a lot of people listen to this and just take those and implement them. Mike, I mean, I could talk to you about this stuff for another 10 hours. So thank you so much for talking to me and kind of going through all of this. And I know people are going to love listening to it. It's always a pleasure, man. Really, really
Likewise.
appreciate the time.
Likewise. All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.